morning.
Morning.
Okay, how's this? Relax. How are we doing there? Good. So, I get to give some kind of concluding talk here. Not really a concluding talk, because the concluding, what we're going to do to conclude is celebrate the recognition a couple of our friends, Dharma friends, have, that this is the path for them, right? So a number of us have already had that celebration, but we get to celebrate it again. And how delightful. So I don't forget to say it. I got to do this, I think, in 2005, if I remember correctly. And one of the really interesting things that happened is that one of our Dharma brothers, actually one of Soham's Dharma brothers, a guy named Daiho, he came up to me after my Jukai ceremony, and he said this. He said, "It's so wonderful to be here with you on your birthday." And it just got me through my heart. And that experience for me was really quite profound, the whole thing. When I got home, I had a whole bunch of packages that came from my father. And it was like the most amazing statue of Guanyin, Avalokiteshvara, and a bunch of other Taoist and Buddhist statues that are in our house, that decorate our house. But they were there waiting for me. And actually, he told me he got them in China. But actually, I discovered since he died, and I was looking through some things, that he probably bought them in Austin. He had been to China. So that was okay. My father was not, always truthful, but the intention was there. Yeah. So here's the other thing about today. So how'd you like to follow the House of Dior and murder cakes? Those are some pretty good teachings. And so one of the things that's quite amazing here, and I just want to say this, I'm going to give Shokan a chance here too. This, what has become Zen River Sangha, it's been a privilege in my life to have been here and to get to be part of this with all of you. Almost everybody here is part of Zen River Sangha now, and they are right now today, whether they're usually or not, right? What a wonderful community to practice in, right? And you might think, okay, so that's grown up over a long period of time. This is maybe more than 20 years old. But this started with Vikara and Manju and Daruma, who were just wonderful teachers, right? Been wonderful teachers for me, along with Junpo. And along the time, there's, an ebb and flow to practice, but really a treasure to have a local Sangha to practice it. And so we're trying to support this and so on. But one of the things we wanted to make sure to say here is that people who are online, you are always welcome to come and practice with us. Yes, Senshin.
I like to say there is a problem with the sound. I don't know how to fix it, but sometimes.
Okay, they're gonna look for a different mic.
Thank you.
Maybe you just pin it higher.
Yeah, a little bit higher maybe.
Well, if we get it much higher, it'll be on my tongue and that won't work.
Yeah.
How's this? Is this better?
It's off.
That was definitely better, right? I'm not spoiling your practice with all this jabbering. Okay. So, what I was talking about is how delightful it's been to be able to practice here. So I want people in the ether to know that you're always welcome to practice with us at Zen River. Zen River is set up for hybrid practice, and our practice time is at 6:30 on Wednesday evenings and 7:30 on Saturday mornings. Those are our regular times.
Central.
Yeah, United States Central Time. Yeah. As opposed to European Central Time. We have some people from there. And you know, it's like we get to practice together. So we have someone practicing with us from Moscow. And we regularly have someone practice with us from Dubai who actually got to come here and be physically here for a couple days. And we have Germany, and we had somebody from Poland, and people from all across the United States, Canada. It's really quite remarkable how we practice. I was kind of reluctant to get into this hybrid world for practice or to get into the online world for practice. And COVID forced us to do it. And I still think practice in person is preferred, but it's pretty good. And one of the things that I think is important about it is that if we're serious about sacred stewardship, this is one thing that we can do that can decrease our carbon footprint. And it's also something we can do that makes practice accessible to people that don't have all the resources to travel around. So Shokan, you wanted to say something about Kintsugi Sangha?
So you've got the microphone, so if you could repeat for me, right?
Oh.
The Kintsugi Sangha is also hybrid, also online, and meets Mondays at 6:30. And it's part of this tradition, but it's a little different. But everyone is always welcome. You can get the link by going to the Mando Zen website and look for the local communities.
So you can correct what I got wrong. The Kintsugi Sangha is also hybrid and in person. Actually, I think meets in Heartland.
It meets in Heartland, Wisconsin, Mondays at 6:30.
Mondays at 6:30, and you can get the link for either of these places off the Hollow Bones website.
6:30 p.m.
6:30 p.m. Central Time, correct.
Central.
United States Central Time. Oh, yeah.
Planet Earth, thank you.
So, you know, it is an embarrassment of riches to be able to practice here in Wisconsin, right? So there's 3 of us who are present here. There's more than 3 Dharma heirs here in Wisconsin. I guess Byran and Jimpo passed. Manju, who is a founder here, has passed. But Meru is still here. And that's just quite remarkable. And not just that, but all the priests that we have here. And the blessing of Umi, who's joining us from Ohio. Huh?
Or curse.
So far a blessing. But and I think also in Ohio you have a local sangha.
Right.
So, anyway, and you know, all the people who work to make this happen, but most importantly, all of your practice, right? It's all practice. And in case you're confused about this, sometimes it sounds like we're confused about it because we talk about practice. We are practicing something all the time. Okay? So you get to choose what you practice, right? You get to choose what you practice all the time. Junpo used to say, it's not coffee table practice, right? When we're sitting here on the cushion. And it's not. And it's always practice. So what are we practicing? That's an interesting question. So I want to talk just a little bit about Jukai. So when we started offering Jukai here, I was thinking about how to do it. And because I wasn't Junpo, I didn't want to do it exactly the way Junpo did it. Although kind of now I'm doing it the way Junpo did it. But because I get to give this talk today, I want to talk to you about a couple things that are important to me about our practice. And so when I was trying to understand, well, how did these kind of lay ordinations happen and where did that come from and so on? I mean, we could look back to the Buddha's day because he just walked around and met people and ordained them, basically. He said, join in, right? And Junpo's way was frankly a lot like that. But in trying to understand how Zen developed this in particular, the oldest stuff like this that I really could find was in the Platform Sutra from Hui Neng. And so I looked at that, and there's some things that I saw in there that were like really important to me and helped bring together some parts of practice for me. And particularly, it has to do with this. We just recited the Song of Zazen, and in the Song of Zazen, we say this bit about the son of a rich house who has wandered away among the poor. And that's a poetic allusion to a story in the Lotus Sutra. But I want to tell you for sure, I'm not talking about richness and money because I didn't come from a rich, wealthy family or anything like that. But that is certainly true of me. I took a real walk on the wild side, right? And so, and a part of my path back, the awakening path, actually, I find reflected in this thing from Hui Neng, which is like from a very long time ago. Right? This is what he said about Zen. I got to find it. This is in a poem that he recited on the occasion of one of these big ordinations he gave in China, where there was a whole bunch of people. And he said this: fools work for blessings, not the way. Working for blessings, they say, is the way. From offerings and alms, they offer endless merit. Then in their minds, they build hateful futures. Working for blessings, trying to end sin, next life their sins are there with their blessings. To learn how to drive all sin from your mind, within your own nature, truly repent. Once you understand Mahayana repentance, you'll end wrongs and do right and be without sin. Students of the way who can see for themselves join the same lineage as the enlightened. So I'm going to skip a little bit. Well, I'm not. Your teacher transmits this direct teaching, hoping you students will share the same body. If in the future you seek your true self, purify your mind of what creates poison. Walk the way with vigor and don't be a slacker, or suddenly you'll pass this life in vain. So, and then I like the strength of that. But then he says something a little clearer. In a different ceremony at a later time. I'm going to pick it up in the middle. Foolish people who study this teaching can't understand the Dharma directly. There must be 10,000 ways to explain it, but all are based on one rule. In your dark house of afflictions, keep the sun of wisdom shining. Falsehood arises because of afflictions. When the truth appears, afflictions depart, letting truth and falsehood be, nothing is left to purify. And then here's where I'm gonna skip a little bit. People who truly follow the way don't consider the faults of the world. Those who consider the wrongs of the world only add to their own. I don't condemn the faults of others. My own wrongs are what I'm after. Just get rid of thoughts about wrongs and all your afflictions will shatter. So this is about shining the light inward, right? And it's quite important, I think. And, I can't say, I don't want to try to say that I perfectly apply this, because if I do, Mitra is going to interrupt me. But I believe this wholeheartedly. And what's being said here, if I look to the outside and say, the so-called outside, and say the problem's there, I have no agency whatsoever. In fact, the only possible agency I have is to try to run away from that. And in my experience, I can't get away from that. And that's because that actually isn't where the struggle lies. The struggle lies here. And I used to think about it in a certain sense. In liberation, there is unbounded agency, but it's not unbounded in one sense. It's like just so much agency, and it's enough, right? It's enough because all that arises occurs based on causes and conditions. So what I do now, right, when I face some challenge, is influential in terms of what happens next. That's the law of karma. The law of karma is not nihilistic, it's not fatalistic. It doesn't mean there's no agency, but as near as I can tell, not really externally. And so this is important to us, and it's important as Mahayana practitioners. We take this really fancy vow. So it's important to us because in the process of awakening, the method is to shine the light inward. That's what Huineng was talking about there. And if we don't, then we can't really awaken, because that's where the agency lies. But also, we're about ministry. I'm the abbot of this order now. And what are we doing in ministry? The most important thing we do in ministry, every last one of you do, which is your best to live the way. In living the way, you're like the bell ringing, bong, right? Bong. And the teaching, like if we look at the Diamond Sutra in particular, which is what was the foundation for Huineng's awakening, it's that one who thinks of themselves as a bodhisattva who's saving beings is not a true bodhisattva, because truly there's no bodhisattva and there's no beings to be saved, right? Those are just ideas, right? So sometimes that's called the stink of Zen, right? You have the stink of Zen. So it is good to bring the Dharma and to tell people about our experience, but better to ring this in the way that we live. And every one of us, this is the Mahayana path, right? So another one of these teachings from Huineng is that dhyana, clear, deep heart, mind. meditation practice, and wisdom, prajna, are not two. So dhyana and prajna, we're not practicing so that we can become wise. Practice itself is our wisdom, or the marriage of wisdom and compassion, to say it another way, to remember the teachings that Shokan gave us yesterday. And another character out of the history named Dogen went to China struggling with this question. If, as has become our understanding, that all being is a manifestation of Buddha nature. So all being, basically, you are all Buddhas, right? You just maybe don't realize it. We are all Buddhas. We don't always realize this. If this is true, then why do we need to practice? And here's the reason why. Because that basic concept, we all are manifestations of Buddha nature, have the potential for awakening. This is our birthright. The potential is the potential to practice. Buddhism is not about ideas, it's about practice, activity, the activity of awakening. There's a saying, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And that's usually thought of as that the Buddha is not outside of yourself, right? So we talked about that a couple times this week. The Buddha is not outside of yourself. This is awakening, right? Awakening practice ourselves, so-called selves. But here's another thing. If you meet someone who says, I've reached the final state, and implies that that means that practice is complete, I don't know about killing him, but run the other way, right? I'll run the other way, because this is the fundamental, this is what Hui Neng is saying. Dhyana practice, awakening practice, and enlightenment or wisdom are not two. And this is exactly what Dogen found. And it's profound, right? He said, why do I have to practice if all being is a manifestation of Buddha nature? Because Buddha nature simply is our potential to practice and awaken. That's why. Practice is enlightenment. Enlightenment is practice, not two. This is the fundamental teaching of the middle way that's characteristic of Buddhism. And in a way, it's a good thing, right? We talk about the three Dharma gates: impermanence, no self, and suffering, dukkha in this case, suffering. Well, on this understanding, impermanence is like the big deal. Constant change, flow, right? Experience is constantly moving, right? And we can't fix it with our dualistic capacity that I'm using right now. I can't actually tell you the truth. I can do, if I do well, I kind of point in the right general direction. That's the best I'll do. So in this view, the no self and suffering are corollaries of this fundamental truth about impermanence. And sometimes we think about impermanence and we say, oh, everything changes, oh. Impermanence is the gateway to liberation, right? Because if we have confusion or sorrow or suffering, so it's not only the things that we like and want and feel comfortable with that change, all is change, right? And so the gateway to awakening is present because of impermanence, right? We use our conventional capacity to point in the right direction. So the Buddhist practice lives on. We got this candle lit here, and we do the service and all of this. And the patriarch's practice lives on through our practice, right? Through our practice. It's practice which is Buddha nature, right? Practice and the capacity for practice. and I'm just going to say this, somebody may not appreciate it. This applied to the Buddha too. I have great reverence for the Buddha, but the one story that really captures that for me is the story about Ananda and the Buddha and Mahaprajnapati. Right? So, the Buddha's aunt and stepmother and his wife actually wanted to come and practice. And the Buddha was doing the best he could, which is culturally bound. So whatever we teach, how we practice is culturally bound, but it's also maybe a reflection of how what the Buddha needed to do to leave behind confusion and suffering, because of the Buddha's particular background. And so women were put in because of a cultural reason, and maybe because of that reason, held in a kind of a arm's length position. And even when they were admitted to the Sangha, they were given extra rules and all that kind of stuff. None of that makes very much sense to me. I'm going to say that. I don't think that women are less capable of awakening or need extra special rules that men don't need or anything. It might be the other way around, actually. I see some women nodding. Yeah, that's the other way around, believe me. Anyway, but the Buddha said no. Ananda had to come 3 times, right? So even the Buddha could make mistakes, I think, because I think that's a mistake. I mean, now, it doesn't mean that he wasn't doing the best he could do. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying that. I don't think that it was mean-spirited. It just took a little extra attention and a little extra understanding and inquiry before he could get his mind right and say, you know what, that's true. Women can awaken too. So, like I said, it's always practice. Practice in the morning, practice in the evening, practice at the end of the day. So there's a wonderful poem called the Xin Xin Ming, Faith Mind poem. And it expresses something. It says, the great way is not difficult, only don't pick and choose. Just face this as it is. Right? As soon as we start going, oh, I like this, I don't like that, I want this, that's wrong. That's what Huineng was saying also, right? I found this poem a long time ago, attributed to him, translated by a guy named Jan Polsky. And I love to recite this poem on the occasion of Jukai. Deluded, a Buddha is a sentient being. Awakened, a sentient being is a Buddha. Ignorant, a Buddha is a sentient being. With wisdom, a sentient being is a Buddha. If the mind is warped, a Buddha is a sentient being. If the mind is impartial, a sentient being is a Buddha. When once a warped mind is produced, Buddha is concealed within the sentient being. If for one instant of thought we become impartial, then sentient beings are themselves Buddha. In our mind itself, a Buddha exists. Our own Buddha is the true Buddha. If we do not have in ourselves the Buddha mind, then where are we to seek Buddha? We're going to celebrate with Cassie and Matthew the realization that this is the way, right? This is the way. And if you're like the rest of us, and Huineng and Dogen, you might need to practice. Thank you.